Hi everyone. In this video we're going to start talking about Chapter 1, which is where do data come from. This is a very important chapter in that it really lays the foundation for a lot of what we're going to talk about in more detail later on this semester. You're going to learn about a lot of important terms and concepts that are going to resurface many times throughout the semester, and we want you to have a really good understanding of those ideas. So before we get started, I want you to imagine a situation. So we're going to be talking a lot in this course about data. And what I like to do actually at the very start of the semester is to think about gathering data, to think about what's involved in collecting data. So even though you're taking this course in the online format, I want you to imagine for a moment that you're in a large lecture hall with all of the other students who are taking this course online. And let's say that I ask you to try to meet as many of your classmates as possible. I give you about 5 minutes and I ask you to try to meet as many people as you can in that 5 minutes. And from each person you meet, I ask you to gather some information or gather some data. So I ask you to find out the name of that person, the major. I want you to find out the number of credits that your classmate is currently enrolled in this semester. I also want you to find out the approximate number of miles currently lived from campus, and the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word statistics. So again, you have a short amount of time to try to gather all of this data from as many of your classmates as possible. And each time you meet a classmate, you'll also share this information with that person. So think about this. We're going to come back to this a little bit later and talk in a little bit more detail about what kind of information we have here and why it's important. One thing I like to do to start the semester is I really like to find out why you're here, why you're taking this course. And I imagine that a lot of you are here because you have to be here. You're here because you were told to take this course by someone in your department, because you need this course for another course, or you might be here because you're fulfilling a general education requirement. Statistics is actually, you might not know this, but it's actually considered to be the most important course that you will take in college. And you might think that I'm just saying that because I'm your statistics teacher and I want you to think this course is the most important course. But there's actually an article that came out in USA Today in 2015 all about the importance of statistics and why it's such an important course in college. So a lot of other courses that you'll take use statistics in some way, use data in some way. A lot of decisions that you're going to make in everyday life relate to what you're going to be learning about in this course. So statistics are all around us all the time. We are constantly gathering information and making decisions based on that information. We're giving information about ourselves away to other people all the time. And that information is used to make decisions about advertising, about how much things should cost, etc. And what we really want to help you with in this course is just to develop those skills necessary to make sense of a lot of the statistics that you're going to see in your everyday life. We realize that a lot of you might not leave this course and ever take another statistics course. You might not actually do a research study where you have to gather and formally analyze data. But every day you're going to be seeing data in the news, and we want you just to have those skills to be able to make sense of that information and to make informed decisions based on that information. Related to this, I wanted to know what you think about a few things. So I apologize that I have to move around a bit here. I'm going to share with you now several headlines from the news, and some of these maybe you have heard about, some of them are not terribly old, but according to each of these headlines, or according to research, each of these headlines or each of the questions in the headlines has a yes or no answer. And I want to know what you think the answer is. So as I'm going through this, I'd like you to maybe jot down whether you think the answer is yes or no. And maybe you've heard of the study, maybe you haven't. Maybe you have a gut instinct based on what the study is about. So let's try to play this game and we'll see how many you get correct. Okay, so let me move out of the way here. Okay, here we go. Here's the first study. Do tattoos affect your ability to sweat? So again, each time I read something, maybe just quickly jot down a yes or no answer. With all of these, I have links, so if you actually are really curious about any of the questions and want to read more, you can go and find the actual news article. This was in the New York Times. According to this research, the answer is yes. Do dog owners take more pictures of their dog than their spouse? So if you're a dog owner, you probably know the answer. This is yes. Will buying more takeout food make you sad? Here the answer is actually no. They say it'll make you happy because you won't have to do as much cooking and you'll have a little bit less stress in your life. Again, this is according to research, and we're not necessarily saying the research is good. It might not be good research. Is $5 the average amount of money the tooth fairy leaves for a child's first lost tooth? So I remember when I lost my teeth when I was young, and if I got $1, that was a really big deal. My dad collected coins and often would give us silver dollars. We thought that was really neat. Actually, this answer is no. The actual amount is higher than $5, if you can believe that. Maybe you can believe that. I couldn't believe that when I first read it, but it's a little bit higher than $5. It's less than $6, but higher than $5. Do male-named hurricanes kill more people than female-named hurricanes? No, it's the opposite. And the reason the researchers say female hurricanes kill more people is because people don't take them as seriously as male-named hurricanes. Again, this is based on the research, not based on my own opinions or attitudes. Will people give up will people give up privacy for free pizza? Of course they will. The answer is yes there. Okay, so let me move around again here. So a few more quick, I'll go through them quickly. Does drinking tequila help you lose weight? Yes, according to the research. Do people have more trouble sleeping on Monday than any other day of the week? No. Hopefully, or maybe you can guess what day they actually have more trouble sleeping. I'll let you go to that study if you want to know the answer. Are people who are lonely more likely to buy products with faces on the label? The answer there is yes. Okay, a few more quick ones. Is Tuesday at 6:38 a.m. the best day and time of the week to call in sick for work? Yes, it is. You'll actually read that study in a little bit more detail later on this semester. Is athletic ability related to finger length? Yes, it is. Is baseball America's favorite sport? No, it's not. It's football. Again, according to the research. So again, every single day you see studies like this being published. You see headlines or claims being made about things that are going on, and they're based on research, and the research might be good. It might be a really nice experiment that was conducted. It might be more observational research. When you read the details a little bit more, you might start to question what was done and how conclusions were made and whether the conclusions were valid. And again, throughout the semester, we'll be talking about things like this, and we'll be thinking about the questions that you should be asking in order to really make sense of this research, in order to know if it's good research or not. Now, earlier, I asked you to think about gathering a lot of data from your peers. So what is data, and why is it important? What is data? So we're going to talk quite a bit this semester about data. You'll analyze data, you'll explore data, graph data. What is data? So data is information from which conclusions can be drawn. And one really important thing in our course and in statistics in general is that data is information that is gathered with a particular context. So context is very important. And this is one of the things that distinguishes statistics from mathematics. Some of you might be in this course and you might be thinking, oh, this is just a math course. I really hate math. I don't want to take this course. I'm scared of math. So we don't want you to feel that way. We want you to see pretty early on that even though we use some math in statistics, statistics is much more than math. So we need to have an understanding of the context to really make sense of data, to really know what we're supposed to do with this information that we've gathered. Without knowing that context, it becomes harder to interpret and understand our data. And I wanted to give you a quick example that will hopefully make this more concrete. So why does the context matter? So let's say I were to show you a plot Might take a little while for my plot to come up on the screen. Okay, here we go. So here is a plot. This is actually called a dot plot. It's a particular way of graphing data. Each of the dots here, so you'll see lots of little dots. Here's a dot, for example. Each of those dots represent a particular case, a particular individual from which information was obtained. So just looking at this line and looking at these dots without context, it makes it really hard for us to know what we're looking at. I have no idea, for example, what these dots even represent. I don't know what these numbers represent. What are these quantities? So I can certainly see that there's one individual way down here, there's kind of a group up here, and there's another group here. I don't really know why that is and whether that's important or not, whether that will help me make sense of this information. Maybe, for instance, this little point is a mistake. I mean, it's pretty far from the other points. So it's possible that there's some kind of mistake. Maybe that person or individual really isn't supposed to be part of this group. It might make a little bit more sense if I told you that these are weights in pounds of people. So that makes a little bit more sense. That gives us more context. So it makes sense that we would see these numbers. Those seem to be weights that we would observe humans to have. But still, it's really hard to know what's going on here. Why do we have a group here, and then a group here, and then one individual way down here that weighs less than everyone else? So without more of a context, it's hard to really know why we're seeing what we're seeing and what we should do with this information. And I want you to think a little bit about a group of individuals who might have weights like this, where you might have one individual who's way down here, who weighs less than everyone else, where you might have this disparity in weights. And so if any of you know much about rowing, it might make sense why we have this, or suddenly knowing this context, you might be saying, oh, now this makes sense because we know we have a coxswain who's way down here and who would weigh less than everyone else who's in a particular position in the boat. So again, we need that context in order to make sense of this information. Without this context, just knowing these are weights, we might be fooled into believing that maybe this weight that's really distinct from all the other weights is a mistake. Maybe it shouldn't be in there. It's clearly an outlying value. But knowing that weights should be distributed in this way gives more context and an easier way for us to interpret the information. So data is information with the context, and statistics will always give you that context, and we want you to use that context to help you make sense of the information and to decide what you should be doing with the information. What kinds of analyses make sense? What types of graphical displays make the most sense? Okay, so quickly here, I'm going to go through this one last slide and then we'll wrap up this first video for Chapter 1. Individuals are the objects described by a data set. So in that last example with the weights of rowers, the rowers were the individuals because we gathered some data from each rower. We looked at the weight of each rower. Sometimes we call individuals subjects or participants. And, we want you to know in this class that individuals can certainly be people, but there are other times when we might be gathering information from animals, from inanimate objects, from trees, from states. So a whole state might be an individual, from food items. So individuals don't necessarily have to be people. They are the objects that you're describing. They're what data is coming from. So if I were looking at lots and lots of cupcakes and the weights of all the cupcakes would be my my individuals. Or maybe I'm looking at the sugar content of each cupcake. Maybe I'm looking at all the different states and I'm looking at the average income of each state or the median income of each state. So the states would be my individuals. So individuals could be a collection of things. But again, each thing that you're collecting data from, that would be your individual. So I'm going to wrap up here, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about, we'll come back and finish up chapter 1.